Welcome to the Seven Figure Builder Show. My name is Julie Baranek, founder of Seven Figure Builder, where we help high achieving CEOs connect the dots in their business to scale to seven figures and beyond. And I'm here today with my friend Danielle Bettmann. Hey, Danielle.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to chat with you today. So, first and foremost, where in the world are you?
I am in the heart of the Midwest, Omaha, Nebraska, United States.
Awesome. It is gorgeous out there. I love it out west. So, for people that haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet, can you tell us just a little bit about what you do with your business?
Yeah, so I am a parenting coach for families with strong-willed kids, ages 1 to 10, and I help them expand their patience and feel more connected to their child, use positive discipline tools to level up their communication skills and gain more cooperation as a result, so that they're feeling like their relationship with their child is transformed from being one of being constantly dealing with meltdowns and tantrums and feeling defeated to feeling much more confident and connected. And we do that over a group coaching program over 3 months.
Awesome. I love it. And I've had my own share with my own children through the years that I'm picturing. But what do you consider a strong-willed child? Like, what does that look
Yeah.
like to you?
Yeah. It's like if you know, you know, because
I know.
they come out the womb with like a little sticker name tag that says, like, I'm definitely different than my sibling. You can't imagine how different they can be, right? But typically, strong willed kids are really smart and expressive and relatively sensitive, depending on whether that is just the vibe and emotions or sound and light and other things like that. They have high highs emotionally and low lows emotionally. And you end up, as their parent, riding a roller coaster with them, never knowing what's going to set them off next because they are so passionate, so in the present. Everything is a big deal. And that ends up having them have these like really ends of the spectrum of being overly hangry and overtired, and then they're a different kid. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You never and they're very much not themselves when they are having a hard time, but you don't know what to do to get them back, and it just feels like you end up walking on eggshells. And they can be so sweet and so loving when they want to be. It just feels like everything in life has to be their way, their timing, their plan. They have a lot of unspoken expectations about how things should go and then come crumbling down when those are met with reality. So, a lot of how to help set them up for success is things that you can control as a parent by communicating differently and much more ahead of time. You can prevent and diffuse a lot of the emotional battles by not making them power struggles and offering a lot more attention and control in positive ways. And just managing your patience, because it is hard. It is hard to not get sucked in and to really manage your own big emotions in the moment as well. So that's a big part of parenting strong-willed kids.
Yeah, absolutely. My middle one is on the Asperger's, autism spectrum. Do you find a lot of these kids have those struggles, or do you find it could be a little bit of everything?
Yeah, it's kind of like a Venn diagram overlap where there's a lot of the strong-willed kid personality traits that are relatively neurodivergent. So not all neurodivergent kids are strong-willed. Not all strong-willed kids are on the spectrum or have something that's diagnosable. But there is a lot of overlap, and it's unique to every child. So I really help parents just understand a lot more about who their kid is, so that they can parent them and feel really equipped with the tools that work well for them. And there a lot of that works really well with kids that have ADHD and that are autistic, because what the typical parenting strategies are just not landing. And it's going over both your heads and you're just speaking different languages. So that can be really empowering when you find like this, like it unlocks a whole new world.
Yeah. And what are some techniques for parents that are listening? They're like, oh my God, she's describing my world. But like in the heat
Yeah.
of the moment, what are some things that they can use?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a free training and you can go find that on my website. But one of the free trainings I did recently was just on this one tool, and I call it the game changer. And it's basically when you are met with needing to tell them something and they're telling you no, they're ignoring you, they are arguing, and you end up either, typically using bribes and threats in that moment to get them to do what you need them to do, or you end up going down the logic and reasoning route and it like just goes right over their heads and using so many words that are unnecessary. It does not change their mind, surprisingly, or any other, amount of yelling or desperate tactics in that moment. All you have to do is agree with them. Agree with them, say several statements in a row that they are trying to say to you with either their emotions or their behavior. And just say things that basically let them know, I get it. This is a really fun show. Or, yeah, you love ice cream. Or, you wish you didn't have to go to school today. And if you just really sit with them in that moment and let them know, like, it is not me against you, it is me and you. I am here with you. And we just have a problem to solve. And so there's a collaborative problem solving piece as a follow up, but we never say things that they agree with. So of course they're going to then, escalate and feel like they have to defend themselves. And then we find ourselves, at this point of escalation we never wanted to end up. So if you just start with the prerequisite of a few things they agree with, and sometimes I call them you statements, you want this, or you, and it's not, again, telling them what to do or telling them how they feel necessarily, because a lot of strong-willed kids will be really offended and be like, you don't know me. So instead, it's just like, hey, yeah, I get it. Like, you were watching the show and now you really keep wanting to watch the show. You don't want to go to bed. I totally get it. That is normal, right? Like all the things they want, like ice cream for dinner, that's normal. Liking ice cream is not a bad thing. So we can just neutralize it right off the bat. Say, I get it. Then we can move forward with, and there is a boundary or limitation or rule, and the clock is the bad guy, or our routine is the bad guy, or the expectations of society is the bad guy that we have to try to problem solve through together. What can we do? And move forward in a way that is kind and firm. That's the whole goal.
Yeah, I agree, and that can be so helpful. It takes me back to sales, quite honestly. Like that's one of the techniques in sales is like just agree with
Yes.
them, and then we move forward together. But it's similar in parenting.
There's actually like a book written by a Navy SEAL called Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
And it's all about hostage negotiation.
Mhm.
And that's like a whole chapter in the book is like you have to repeat what that person is saying back to them. And to the extent that they would say, yes, exactly. Then their ears are open to hear what you have to say next. And so it's basically a parenting book.
Yeah, that's really funny, and it uses human psychology to
Yes.
move things forward.
Yeah, but it's so not our intuition. It's so not what naturally comes out of our mouth in those moments, especially if that's not how you were parented, which most of us would probably say that's not.
Yeah, no, not so much. So what do you find the role of consistency plays in with things with this?
So consistency is huge when it comes to kids understanding what to expect. And anything that is inconsistent is kind of like it's inadvertently rewarded through a lottery system. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. So let me keep trying. And it's like the crane games. My kids are still obsessed, even though they've never won ever.
My daughter too.
And so they need to know what to expect. They need to know, where the boundaries lie overall as a family, and where that line is of when they've crossed the line into being hurtful or something that is, a really big deal in your family, and that those things are across the board, apply to everyone, very value-based lines. And they really want to know what parent they're going to get. As in, some days we are really unpredictable. We can be really patient and then absolutely fried other days. And so when they ask a question, they always want to know they get a similar response from us and a similar response-ish between two parenting partners. But the line I think that parents get really confused about is, I don't want to contradict myself ever. I don't want to change my mind, because then that means I'm going to set a precedent for the future, and we're going to go down this slippery slope where we have no rules or boundaries anymore because they were able to basically change my mind with their negotiating or coming to terms with new information. And so we find ourselves like locked into this like forced sense of, but I have to be consistent, so I'm going to do what doesn't feel right by like holding a line that really doesn't even feel fair or justified anymore. Like I just feel very confused. And kids can sense that insecurity in us, and then they continue to kind of push the line, and then we end up blowing up. And so the clarity with consistency I help my clients with is, yes, overall, we need to have boundaries we always react to and things that are always a no. And overall, a similar way of making life predictable. But there's always an opportunity for problem solving and helping our kids advocate for themselves and be able to think critically. And sometimes that means that, yeah, we'll share like, nope, this is going to be the plan. And then they're like, well, but what about this? And it's actually compelling. And, we want to be able to have them have space for that so that they can do that in the real world as well. And that doesn't demise your authority. It actually makes you more relatable and honest. And they just really want to know that they're getting the real us rather than like some fake masked version. So that creates a sense of vulnerability and authenticity in your home, which is a really attractive form of leadership. So it's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and ultimately you're just trying to maintain the moral boundaries of this is a non-negotiable, but we're going to
Yes.
navigate with the
The avenues to
non-negotiables.
it can be flexible.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And what have you found, or what do you recommend for kids that are struggling with executive thinking skills? Because I know that's something we came across. Like, what do you recommend for that? And what does that
Yes.
mean for people that don't know what that means?
Yeah, executive functioning skills is anything in like that frontal lobe that works on task initiation and a lot of the thinking that you need to start, complete, and finish simple tasks, care routines, anything that requires remembering from, nowhere. It's a lot of the focus and attention and things that people with ADHD or some neurodivergency really struggle with because it's just not there. It can be taught and worked on, but it is a struggle for sure. So a lot of that can come up in more structured settings like school, where strong-willed kids actually do really well in classroom settings. They typically will keep it together emotionally because they do know the rules and they really want to do well. So they respond really well to that structure and having lots of understanding of what to predict. It's the same every day. That can really set them up for success. And then at home, they kind of lose their minds and fall apart on us. And then there's a lot more unpredictability even when we pick them up. Sometimes we bring a snack, sometimes you run for an errand, sometimes you have a sibling, sometimes we don't. So it feels very aggravating, especially coming off of a day of being told what to do almost the entire time. So what I really recommend is finding tools that set you both up for success, because a third party system can be really supportive. And I actually collaborate with a product based company. Her name is Mighty and Bright. It's mightyandbright.com. Her name's Sarah Olsher. And we've created some products together where we have special time cards, we have a little task board, a stay on task little bracelet. There's little calendars. There's a room reset board where it teaches them step by step how to clean their room and move the little magnet over to done. But there's little things like that when you can finally take things out of your brain and put them on the fridge, it makes life make sense in a whole new way. It brings a sense of control and responsibility. And kids want to feel confident. They want to feel like they have that level of independence. And it's really a win-win. So I recommend that all my clients get a weekly calendar for their kids and a routine chart, with the simple things they have to do care task wise every morning and every evening, and just let them be in charge of the chart, because then you no longer have to nag 1,000 times.
I'm chuckling because my whole parenting life revolved around creating those. And it's nice that you
Right?
have them pre-created, because I was
Yes.
constantly like, depending on what, my son was into, we'd make a sports one, we'd make a cars one, we'd make like
Yes.
whatever the heck the flavor of the week was, like that's what it was. And
So
so I would
smart.
sneak those
Yes. I
into
was making
it.
them with Velcro and trying
Yep.
to get them laminated, and yep.
Oh yeah. Yes. I had sheets of lamination things. I'm like, we're gonna stick it on the fridge, it's gonna work. And
I
yeah,
love
that was
it.
like
But
our
I'm
parenting life.
sure that he thrived with it.
He did. Yeah, it made life a lot easier because we had consistency. He knew what to expect.
Yes.
He knew, it was coming back to that same routine and trying to take the things at school and apply them at home and vice versa.
Yep.
Just give that structure and organization.
Yeah, that's huge. Good
Yes.
job.
We do what we can, right?
Yep.
So what got you started into this? Like what did your journey look like?
Yeah, so I was a classroom teacher out of college. I got a degree from birth through third grade with special ed built in. So it's called the inclusive major. You can teach any child within that age range. So while I had a teaching certificate right out of school, I wanted to only work in early childhood. So I started at a school called Educare, which is a brilliant facility for a Head Start, early Head Start program here in Omaha. And I was a lead teacher for Head Start for a year. And then I realized, oh, wow, these 3-year-olds have like missed out on so much for the first 3 years of their life. Like, I want to start at the very beginning and like where everything is happening at such an amazing quick rate. I'm going to move to early childhood, so early Head Start. So I did that as a lead teacher for 3 years, and I started with like 6-month-olds and then graduated them to preschool when they were 3. And it was incredibly fun and rewarding, and I loved it. And I realized what happens in that classroom is great, but what's happening at home is what's really wiring these kids. And these parents are doing the hardest job in the world with no training or manual or orientation period to speak from. And they're doing the best they can with the information they have. And the more tools we offer and the more support and the more resources and, developmental screenings and all the things, the better that the whole family thrives, not just this one child for this one classroom period. So I ended up moving into home visiting. We partnered with Save the Children, and I did that for the next 4 years. And that was amazing because I got to spend an hour every single week in the families of my caseload's homes. And not only did they like welcome me as family, but we just got to really bond over their child and helping them really understand how important it was to read with their child and bringing them books and just, having them connect in a whole new way of understanding their development. And then I became a parent myself. And my daughters were 15 months apart, which I don't professionally recommend. It was a blur. But by the time my second came, I ended up leaving that position and moving into doing some part-time in-home daycare so I didn't have to pump. And I did that for a little while before leading a mom's group. But that's when I wanted to like go back and apologize to all the parents I had worked with prior to becoming one, because you just don't know what you don't know. And the textbooks are one thing, but your own kids, and I work with a lot of teachers that need help with their own kids because it's just a whole new level. It's an entirely different relationship, and there's just struggles you don't even see at all in those school-based relationships. So I learned it all then again, and my second daughter is the one that I feel like taught me everything I know, that are the non-traditional skills and the higher levels of communication and just the understanding I needed to weather her storms and her high highs and low lows, with also being able to help my husband understand. And then I realized that like my friends all had almost one of these kiddos. That was, the exception to the rule. And then that's who ended up starting to hire me. So I started my business in 2019 doing workshops and in-person home visits and just kind of hopping around town and helping parents, basically just saying like, what do you need help with? How can I help? And eventually started creating resources and guides and things that for the conversations I was having, over and over again. And then the pandemic hit. So I switched everything to virtual, and Zoom has been my friend ever since. I started my podcast in May of 2020 called Failing Motherhood. And then I switched to all one-on-one kind of 4-month coaching programs where I kind of combined everything in a way that still allowed for a lot of individualization throughout families, but taking them through writing a family business plan and a few other kind of structured things. And then 2 years ago, I started my group coaching program. And that has been the biggest breakthrough because it brings families together in a way that they never thought that they needed and desperately needed, because that validation and that support and that camaraderie and being able to share ideas and actually mentor people that come behind you and feeling like, yeah, I actually got part of this figured out and I can help some other people, that boosts your confidence more than anything else. So it is really working through a very strategic kind of 1 week builds on the last set of strategies, but within this group community that has been unparalleled. It's so cool to be have an ecosystem of like newbies and veterans constantly kind of mentoring each other in there in ways that I can't. So I've been doing that kind of primarily for the last 2 years. And the podcast, we're 120 episodes in, I think now. And Failing Motherhood is all about normalizing the feeling if you feel like you're failing and you feel like you're screwing up your kid. And so I ask every single expert I have on, tell us about a time you felt like you were failing. How often do you feel like you're failing? Just be real with us so that we can feel a little bit better that if you have a temper and you feel like, you're afraid to admit some of the things that you think, we say those things out loud on Failing Motherhood and offer a lot of insight as well. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
I love it. That's amazing. Our perspectives change so much when we have our own children. So I can definitely appreciate, like I started my career as a registered nurse and then shifted entirely into IT and consulting for pharmaceutical companies. And like it's gone, directions I never anticipated. But I remember when I had my son and I'm like, okay, I know the first 2 days of life because that was my job, like bring them into the world. It was in, labor and delivery. I
Mm.
can help you with the first 2 days. After that, I was winging it, like I was learning just like everybody else.
Yep.
So you figure it out as you go,
Yes, yes, that's all you can do. And it feels
Yeah.
like you're putting together the cars that's already like flying down the interstate and, winging spaghetti against a wall.
Yeah, totally. And what do you recommend for people that feel like they need more help where they are? Like I remember, when my son was 3 and we were trying to get help and people were saying, "No, you're fine. You don't need help." And it's like, "Oh my God, you don't see my every day."
Yes, yes. There's such a stigma still with like parenting resources and asking for help with parenting because surely you should be able to figure out your own child. And that comes from extended family just telling you you just need to be more strict, they just need a good spanking. And it comes from friends, when they're like, "Oh yeah, my kid's really hard. I had to give them a timeout once." And you're like, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
We're on
And it
totally
comes from
different
yourself.
wavelengths. Yeah.
Entirely, yeah. No, we do not have the same kid. But it's all that feels so isolating and so like you're just marooned on an island and nobody gets it and you don't know anybody that has a kid like yours and you're just petrified and mortified of their behavior because it feels like a reflection on you and you're failing them and you can't stay calm and so you have your own inner voice in your head too, just making you feel like you're the worst parent ever because obviously you're worried about it because you care and you wouldn't feel defeated if you weren't trying and it's not for lack of effort, it's not for lack of information usually. Like most of my clients have come to me because they've done courses and they've read books, but it's not enough. It does not translate to the moment. It doesn't speak to this unique situation. It doesn't help them troubleshoot and tweak when they run into a wall and they just feel stuck and give up. And they end up, becoming almost despondent, like just giving in to everything because who cares anymore? And, that really affects the relationship with their child. And it feels to feel like you don't want to be around your child or you don't enjoy that time with them when you know that you could because you've had some of those good moments and you just want more of them. So don't let those things stop you from finding the days that are possible for your family when that's there. All you need is support and you deserve that. You're doing something really hard. There's arguably not a lot of things more important than our role as a parent. So if there's, a budgeting system, parenting should be at the top of our list for, how our values are then represented by how we spend our money and what choices we're making to help us in that arena. And it makes sense that if you go to work, you have studied for 7 years for that job. So yeah, you feel confident and, have a good view of yourself at work, but you don't have that at home because you haven't had anything near that amount of college level prep to help you feel like you got this figured out. And you can feel that way. And my course is kind of like a crash college course where it really does give you all the insight from that comprehensive angle to then run with that and say, okay, I have the tools, I have the insight. Now it all makes sense in a way where it's still our days aren't going to be perfect, but I know I'm on the trajectory to where I want to be. And I know I'm being the person I want to be because I've really taken control and responsibility for my side of this equation. So better days are inevitable when you really do invest in and commit to finding the tools that you need for the specific kid you have. And there's no better way to do that than within a community of other parents that really get it too. And there's actually a surprising number of PhDs in the group right now
Oh yeah.
because they are all really highly educated, accomplished parents that just feel so discouraged by their parenting journey. And they know that there is so much they don't know out there in the world that it just feels so overwhelming. And they just realize like they're experts in this better than I am. Like I'm an expert, mechanical engineer. That does not translate to understanding what is going on in my kid's head right now. So, but I know that I can find those answers because those people are out there and, you don't have to let that mean something about who you are. A lot of times, if you're a very analytical, logical person, you're a scientist mind, you're just trying to make sense of it, and emotions feel very not make sense-ish. So it just feels like, you're just beating your head against a wall. So a lot of the partners and like men that come alongside the moms in the group end up supporting each other too, because it's like they speak another language of how frustrating it can be sometimes, or some of the thoughts that are in their head. And you'd never know. You'd never know until somebody else said it out loud that is nailing it on the head. And that's where those breakthroughs come from.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to feel competent. I mean, especially for
Yeah.
those people that have the PhDs or are successful in their careers, you feel so incompetent at home sometimes that you want to
Yeah,
get the help, but you don't know where to get the help. So,
exactly.
but if I can offer one tip from a mom who's been there that I found that was like huge in my journey over the past 20 years. I remember when my son was 3 and we were going to the intermediate unit to try to get help. And we went through the assessment and they're like, nope, you're fine. It's like, no, we're not. And so I went
Hmm.
home and I am very logical and analytical. So I just started writing and I created a list of like everything that seemed just a little bit off to me.
Yeah.
And then started grouping it of like, this is the sensory integration, like his sensory was off and this and that, like all the way through. And then I went back to the IU and we went for another evaluation. I'm like, here, because so often, they're like, so tell me what's going on. And then off the top of your head, you have to come up with your entire world. And I know for me
Yes.
personally, I really struggled with that. But that was, they're like, yep, you're in, like as soon as they saw the data that went around it, right? That like, this is my life in a nutshell, like, yep, no
Hmm.
problem, you're in. And then I kept those. And like every time we needed more help, I would go back through and I would do it again. And so I have literally a snapshot of like every 3 years of my son's life that I now have, that now that he's almost 20, like if I need to refer back, I can do that. And, it's
Powerful.
just been like totally life changing. And I would give it to the doctors feeling quite honestly silly because I'm like, okay, I seem like a neurotic parent, but their eyes would just bug out and they're like, I've never seen somebody give us this like comprehensive document. But it was so incredibly powerful in getting the resources or trying to get the resources, that they needed at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. And you do know your kid best. And it's just hard when you're put on the spot sometimes to feel like you can be their best advocate, because there's a lot going on. You're not just twiddling your thumbs. So
Yeah.
having that in front of you, I'm sure helped them take you more seriously and just feel like you had something outside of your brain to rely on. So that's so smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Super helpful. So, how would you encourage parents to have fun again in parenting? Because we can get so bogged down in the day to day.
Yes, you can. Absolutely. And there's a lot of moments where you end up feeling like your back's against the wall because you asked them to do something and they're not doing it. And they told you no and they're ignoring you. And you can feel it like rising up in you. And in that moment, you have a choice. You have two doors to open at that moment. One is to get angry, and you've tried that before, and you know how that ends. Or the other option is to get playful. And the the mindset shift that a lot of my clients have really embraced is both take energy. You're spending energy either way to either deal with the pent up, pressure cooker that explodes in you, and then the meltdown that occurs in them, and all of the pieces you have to pick up, or trying to put on your best improv hat and detach and not take it seriously or personally, and instead find a way to make it playful to get their cooperation. And it doesn't mean you have to be like everything is cupcakes and rainbows, or you have like a Mary Poppins bag of all these tricks. You don't have to be a clown. You just have to let it roll off your back. A lot of times they're almost just like spewing venom or like shooting darts at you, and you just don't have to engage. You don't have to let them hit you and hurt. You can, like, one of my clients said, her daughter was like, this is the worst day of my life, when she was like ran out of Pop Tarts or something so
Right. Yeah.
insignificant.
Of course.
And she was just like, oh, you think this is bad? What if a boa constrictor came in here and just wrapped us both up? Then what would you do? And that's a perfect way to just let it go, move on, laugh about something, and then find another thing to eat for breakfast. And so often we're just like, you can't talk to me that way. This isn't the worst day of your life. I just all the reasonings about like why that's an inaccurate statement. But really, it's just showing they're just getting their emotion out. And we do that in a lot of other ways too. And we don't want everybody nitpicking the way that we vent, so it's just those moments of like, how can I find an angle of humor to help us both laugh and move on?
Absolutely. And like you said, either one takes energy. You can choose where to invest your energy or how you want to invest your energy.
Yeah.
But
And
it
one
makes a
feels a
lot of
lot
sense.
better by the end.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. Either way, you get relief.
Yes.
So, how do you define success, either in parenting, personally, professionally? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, to me, success equals freedom and everything. Everybody, you can define success, then you can define freedom. But for me, freedom, it feels like having the most control over my choices of how I spend my time and how I spend my money. And for me, the flexibility of being an entrepreneur has far outweighed the cons. And we know there are a lot of cons and a lot of hard days and late nights and, all those moments as well. But at the end of the day, the flexibility and the freedom that it allows me to be, the main fundraiser coordinator for my kids' school and, pick them up early and, spend most of the summer with them and be able to be spontaneously generous. Those things far outweigh the hard journey. So that to me is, I feel like the day is successful if I was truly kind of my own boss in a way of how I'm spending my time and my money. And for the most part, it's going to be spending it with my kids as much as possible. We went to the Barbie movie earlier this week. So, doing
Nice.
things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you had the attention of the whole world for 5 minutes, what would you tell them?
I would have a conversation about how much parents not right now are realizing that they have to heal their inner child, and everyone is feeling like they're realizing the deepest root of like their anxieties is that they don't feel good enough, or there's these messages and these prevailing things that they feel like they're really struggling with that hold them back in a lot of big ways. And as an entrepreneur, you have to face that head on. And what we haven't drawn the connection to is that parents are the ones that are influencing those messages and are creating those environments and that are establishing kind of that wiring in those first 7 years of life, downloading kind of that subconscious that a child then runs on autopilot the rest of their life. And at least in our society, I don't feel like we have fully embraced the importance of how sacred childhood is, how little we really do respect children in our society, and how we really still respect parents' rights over kids' rights. And, that's kind of a whole conversation. But I feel like if we can just connect the dots between the things we're struggling with now, our parents did our best, but you have the opportunity as a parent now to kind of rewrite that story for your child and do things a little bit more intentionally that can pay off the entire rest of their life. And it is worth the effort and the work day in and day out of trying to do your best. You will not be perfect, but it's like 30% of the time, if you can offer a really warm, responsive relationship that is emotionally mature, that's everything that they need to kind of lay that really healthy foundation. So just knowing the importance of your work, but also having a lot of self-compassion that, no parent is perfect. It's actually better if you're not, because they need to see you apologize. You have to model emotion regulation and all of that too. So take that anxiety off your back, but truly just know what you're doing is so worth the effort and it's so important.
Love it. How can listeners support you in your work? Where can they find you online?
So my website is parentingwholeheartedly.com. And that's where you can find a link to my free masterclass, my free training called Authentic and Unapologetic. If you want to learn how to parent your strong-willed child without threats and bribes and crushing their spirit, then that's where you're going to go and download that to watch on demand. You can go to Failing Motherhood, wherever you're listening to this podcast, and subscribe and find the links to kind of the most listened to episodes or where to start with a strong-willed child at failingmotherhood.com. Or you can find that, on my homepage as well. And then I'm on Instagram most often. I'm at parent_wholeheartedly. And you can find me there and say hi and that you found me through this podcast. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for being on today. This was very informative and near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And if you found value in this episode, please do share it. That's how people find us. And you can find me at sevenfigurebuilder.com and redhotleadmachine.com. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.